The best coach in the NFL today is Sean Mcvay. That's right. The guy who looks like he could be a Hollywood actor and is married to the most gorgeous girl I've ever laid eyes on is the man I'd want to start my franchise with over everyone else moving forward. But how does one define what makes a coach the best in the league, or even a good coach for that matter? Is it his career accomplishments, his offensive or defensive scheme? What about his ability to lead a locker room? The answer to that question is all of it. To me, there's 5 major boxes that a coach must check in order to be recognized as an elite coach, and especially the best coach in the league. Resume, scheming and play calling, development and elevation, NFL impact, and the leadership. These 5 categories prove the validity of McVay's claim to the coaching throne. Through 5 years in LA, McVay has coached the Rams to 5 winning seasons, 4 playoff appearances, 3 NFC West titles, a pair of NFC titles, and finally, the Lombardi Trophy just this February. The only coaches with the resume to match that since McVay began coaching are Bill Belichick and Andy Reid. He has a career record of 55-26. Good for a win percentage of 67.9%, and boasts an impressive playoff record of 7-3. McVay has the highest win percentage of any coach in the NFL as of today, and boasts the 8th highest win percentage in NFL history. McVay is also the youngest head coach to win a Super Bowl, make multiple Super Bowl appearances, and be named Coach of the Year. He's the youngest coach to ever reach 50 wins. The only coach with more combined regular season and playoff wins since McVay was hired by the Rams in 2017 is Andy Reid. And while McVay had to deal with Jared Goff for 4 seasons, Reid got his hands on Patrick Mahomes, who will probably go down as a top 5 quarterback of all time by the time his career ends. While McVay has shared a division with the consistently good Seahawks, and the latter half of his time has seen the 49ers rise to prominence, Reid has shared a division with the Chargers, Broncos, and Raiders, all 3 of which have been mostly unstable over the past 5 seasons. Even still, McVay has been to and won as many Super Bowls as Reid has in that time. Don't forget, he's done all of this taking over a franchise that hadn't had a winning record for 13 seasons and had lost a majority of the fan base due to a controversial move from St. Louis to Los Angeles. That resume, on its own, is not only enough to warrant a claim to the throne of NFL coaches, but would likely get McVay into the Hall of Fame if he were to retire today. Remember, he's done all of this in just 5 seasons. There's a strong chance that his resume is even more impressive in 5 years from today than it is 5 years through his tenure. Clearly, he checks this box. Sean McVay is as good of an offensive schemer and play caller as the NFL has. Now, it is important to define what exactly McVay's offense is. At the core of his offense is the wide zone running play. Wide zone refers to the blocking of the offensive line, as well as the path of the running back. McVay's swashbuckling wide zone run scheme, adapted from Mike Shanahan, confused defenses for years, and was a major contributor to the beginning of a new, more creative offensive era of NFL football. He paired it with a West Coast-style passing game built on slants and crossers, routes that created open holes over the middle of the field due to the linebackers being baited by the wide zone run. The play-action passing game was unstoppable in this system. Sean's 2017 offense showed as big of a season-to-season improvement as any offense has seen in league history, and his 2018 offense was historically dominant. McVay's constant use of 11 personnel was to the point that he had been able to make every play look exactly the same pre-snap. The same players, in the same formation, running the same pre-snap motion, defenses were lost all year long. Even as his scheme was adjusted to, he still found ways to be effective enough to win games. But Goff began to limit the effectiveness of the offense with his over-reliance on quick passes. The Rams addressed this by making the biggest move in an offseason full of moves, trading a pair of first-round picks for quarterback Matthew Stafford. With Stafford, McVay could run a real passing game. He no longer needed to rely on pre-snap motion and under-center rollouts to create space in his passing concepts. There were longer routes, wider sets, and letting the quarterback read the defense from the shotgun. McVay went back to his revolutionary ways. His shotgun-based drop-back pass game was the most diverse and creative in football. Totally dominant in the first half of the season, got somewhat adjusted to in the second half, but returned to dominance in the playoffs on the way to a Super Bowl win. Integrating a new quarterback is never easy, so the fact that it resulted in the Super Bowl in Stafford's first season with the Rams is a credit to both Matt and Sean. He was able to effectively modify his passing scheme with a new quarterback, and he schemed and motioned Cooper Kupp all the way into having a historically great season all year. His offenses have found ways to be as explosive in the pass game as any team for an extended period of time, despite being heavily limited at quarterback for a majority of his time as a head coach. His offenses have consistently overachieved in yards after catch, or YAC production. And just in general, McVay's Rams have been one of the league's most productive offenses since he took over. Of course, Sean's scheme will always be tied to his friend and now rival Kyle Shanahan's. The two will always be intrinsically linked to each other, fair or not, for the similarities of their offenses. The question of who the better mind is truly ends up a matter of opinion. Kyle is more creative, McVay's offenses have performed better. Kyle's run game has more wrinkles and has been more effective, while McVay's passing game is more diverse and has thrived to a greater, more consistent degree. Kyle's play calling has gotten more out of his YAC players compared to McVay's, but when the chips were down in last year's NFC Championship game, Deebo Samuel, the best player on the 49ers offense, touched the ball just once. The Niners' final drive consisted of plays run for JaMychal Hasty and Jawan Jennings. Meanwhile, Cooper Kupp, the best player on the Rams offense, proved to be the difference maker for the Rams on the clutch drives to beat the Bucs, 49ers, and Bengals in the Super Bowl. This is something McVay has an advantage in over Kyle. Instead of overthinking and trying to be the smartest guy in the room, he adjusted his offense, ran tempo, and simply designed the play for his best player in the game's biggest moment. It's a major reason that McVay already has a Super Bowl while Shanahan is still searching for one. Killer instinct. Whomever you favor in this department, there's no denying McVay's elite ability to scheme offensive football and call plays is right up there with the best of them. Let's start with Jared Goff. In 2016, Jared Goff took over the reins in Week 11 and was the worst quarterback in football. He was inaccurate, inefficient, overwhelmed, and just flat out sucked. He was last in seemingly all stat categories. Sean Mcvay takes over in 2017 and transforms him into one of the most effective passers in football over the next 2 seasons. Look at the EPA leaders in that 2-season stretch. Mahomes, Breeze, Rivers, Brady, Ben, Ryan. Goff? That's right. Jared Goff behind 6 future Hall of Famers. It doesn't even sound right. Under McVay, Goff's yards per attempt numbers have always outperformed his ADOT, or average depth of target, numbers on a yearly basis. Overall, he ranks 7th in yards per attempt and 15th in intended air yards per attempt during that stretch. That yards per attempt ranks above the likes of Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady. In adjusted net yards per attempt, a stat that takes into account mostly all quarterback statistics, Goff ranks 7th in football in that stretch, above Russell Wilson and Matthew Stafford, and even led the league in 2017. Last season, in Detroit, Goff ranked 26th in yards per attempt, 27th in EPA, and 21st in adjusted net yards per attempt. He was exposed as a below-average quarterback. Sean Mcvay being able to have multiple seasons of elite offensive play, win 3 playoff games in 4 seasons, rank 4th in regular season wins over the stretch, and make Jared Goff a borderline top 10 quarterback statistically, top 5 in 2017 and 2018, when he has been an abject disaster without McVay, shows the level of development and elevation McVay has on his players. He was able to win and flourish offensively with a below-average player at the most important position. Here's the other thing. Playoff Goff. In the playoffs, Jared Goff performed poorly. The Rams averaged 28 points per game on their way to the Super Bowl, and Goff was very average in both games along the way. He did not pass for 300 yards or 2 touchdowns in a single playoff game for the Rams, yet won half of them. McVay won a game in 2020, then won a playoff game in Seattle, scoring 30 points with John Wolford playing all of and part of the game. John Wolford. Anybody with eyes could have seen that Jared Goff was a complete product of Sean McVay, and he had taken him far, but he needed something new to get over the top. In comes Matthew Stafford. Not only did McVay significantly elevate Jared Goff, but he elevated Matthew Stafford. You can just call the guy the master quarterback elevator at this point, even compared to Shanahan. Now, this is not to say Stafford wasn't a good quarterback in Detroit, because he was, but his best ever season just took place. For his career in Detroit, Stafford had a 17-game pace of 4,648 yards and 29 touchdowns. In 2021, Stafford threw for 4,886 yards and 41 touchdowns, over 200 more yards and 12 more touchdowns than his usual production. Not only were Stafford's volume stats as good as ever, but he also set career highs in completion percentage, touchdown percentage, yards per attempt, adjusted net yards per attempt, and passer rating. In 2021, Stafford's advanced stats were significantly above his Lions averages and among the best in football, a result of McVay's improved passing concepts within 20 yards. McVay's system unlocked the best of Stafford's overall ability as a passer, significantly increasing his proficiency in the short and intermediate ranges of the field while maintaining his elite downfield passing abilities. Here's the difference. Stafford, unlike Goff, could manufacture offensive production without the perfect play and play call, as proven in the playoffs. McVay proved he could elevate a below-average quarterback to an above-average level, and then elevate a good quarterback to an elite level, and was rewarded handsomely for it. But McVay's development and elevation is not limited to quarterbacks. Todd Gurley went from a total disaster in 2016 to the league's leading rusher over the next 2 years, even an Offensive Player of the Year in 2017. Receiver Robert Woods saw an uptake of 25 yards per game from his Buffalo career to his Rams career when entering McVay's system. Cooper Kupp, an unheralded third-round slot receiver from Eastern Washington of all places, put together the greatest receiving season ever and has entered the league's elite in McVay's system. His offensive lines have always overachieved relative to talent level due to his scheme and development, consistently among the top 10 in football over his tenure. Roger Saffold played the best football of his career with McVay, and unheralded players such as David Edwards, Brian Allen, Austin Corbett, Boston Blythe, and Rob Havenstein have all played at an above-average level with McVay. Has McVay had his fair share of talent that was already developed into superstars? Of course he has. He inherited the greatest defensive player of this generation, Aaron Donald, and acquired Jalen Ramsey, Odell Beckham Jr., Andrew Whitworth, among others. But every coach has had those advantages at some point or another. Bill Belichick didn't exactly develop Randy Moss. Mike Tomlin didn't develop Troy Polamalu. McVay has proven that he can develop talent at an extremely high level and elevate players to play at a higher level than their talent level would suggest. He absolutely checks this box. Quantifying the impact on the NFL a coach has is a unique task, but a task that seems obvious when it's completed. Let Sean McVay's Wikipedia page tell you about his impact. The Sean McVay effect is a term used to describe an ongoing shift in the hiring practices of National Football League head coaches towards young, offensive-minded coaches. The phrase originates from Los Angeles Rams head coach Sean Mcvay, who when hired in 2017 became the youngest NFL head coach in the Super Bowl era. Mcvay would quickly turn the Rams into a perennial Super Bowl contender on the back of a high-powered offense. Following the success of Mcvay and the Rams, NFL teams began to increasingly hire relatively young head coaches with offensive backgrounds. Teams are scrambling every January to find the next Sean Mcvay, the new Sean Mcvay. I think that speaks for itself on how impactful Sean McVay has been. Leadership, defined as the action of leading a group of people or an organization. An act that is so widely respected and shown, yet not recognized enough. For a coach, leadership can be exhibited in an excess of ways, including taking full responsibility, creating a strong culture and locker room, or being able to steer a franchise in the preferred direction. This is where Sean McVay separates from the rest of the NFL as a head coach. McVay preaches competitive greatness and emphasizes systematic development to establish an identity, improve technique, and master our systems, and come together as a team. Every coach should be a teacher. Sean McVay is a great leader to study and a great teacher to learn from in an array of ways. Quote, good coaches help their players reach their highest potential. In order to do that, it starts with being able to connect with them as human beings first. You do that by believing in guys and caring about them. When you care about the players you are working with, that's when they want to play hard for you. This quote exemplifies McVay's treatment of his players. McVay's comments could be summarized in the simple and powerful leadership lesson. Care for your people. Because when you care for your people, you earn the opportunity to get everything they have. Sean McVay's players worship him, but because he worships them, McVay is able to effectively deliver his message and integrate players of all different ages, races, and phases into his culture. He treats them with respect and kindness, but demands and expects the utmost from them each week. And that style of leadership, the kind but tough and certainly fair style that McVay has perfected, has seen him create a winner out of a loser, generate stars out of nobodies, and form the best culture of any team in the league.
We talk about overcoming stuff. You guys put yourself in a position to take the lead. But you talk about resilience. Yes, guys staying together, continuing the battle, finding a way through adversity. Hosting the NFC Championship next week at our place. We know we got some things to clean up, man. But this epitomizes how you guys stay mentally tough. This is everything right here for the team. You guys were a huge part of it.
Yes, the Rams have had talented rosters with McVay. His NFC champion rosters in 2018 and 2021 especially were filled with Hollywood superstars, so to speak, on both sides of the ball. But that also makes those teams all the more difficult to deal with in the locker room. In almost all cases, the greater the player, the larger the ego. McVay has crafted a culture into which stars, such as Ndamukong Suh, Marcus Peters, Jalen Ramsey, Matthew Stafford, Von Miller, Odell Beckham Jr., and others want to play for, want to be a part of the team, to play for him and the Rams more so than themselves. All because of McVay. It's a Phil Jackson-esque quality that so few coaches in all of sports history don't possess. Think about how many teams with a plethora of superstars and tons of hype and expectations have failed internally, such as the Eagles' dream team. The Rams in either of 2018 or 2021 could have followed the exact same path, but Sean prevented that from happening. McVay's humility and willingness to take accountability, ability to command, lead, and demand the respect of a locker room filled with some of football's biggest stars, and cultivate a culture of nothing into one built off of accountability, humility, teamwork, and ultimately triumph. Into one where stars choose to be a part of.
Let me just tell you something right now. What you're not going to regret is waking up right now, playing our best ball, good execution. There's 9:58 left. Our defense is playing great. They're going to get a stop. Be in the moment, one play at a time. Believe it, and you'll be world champs. Believe this. find it right here in our gut. Go get this done. Let's go. All right, I believe it.
He fits LA to a T, between the cheekbones and handsomeness to his glamorous vibe and style of offense. But he has a tireless work ethic and lust for improvement, along with the humility to look himself in the mirror and the honesty to recognize his flaws. Slightly paraphrasing an ESPN article written by Seth Wickersham about McVay in August. Quote, McVay's first glimpse of himself after LA's 23-20 win over the Bengals was odd. He didn't feel like the living truth of his outstanding resume, that he, in only 5 years, without a day under 500, with playoff wins over Kyle Shanahan, Pete Carroll, Bruce Arians, and Sean Payton, with his own football tree, 4 head coaches strong, has a chance to be one of the greats, maybe the greatest ever. No, like Vince Lombardi and Belichick on mornings after some of their championships, McVay felt grateful and humble. All of that sets him into unmatched territory in this department of coaching. And that answers the question. No coach in the NFL combines a Hall of Fame level resume with a brilliant offensive system and exquisite play calling abilities, develops and elevates his players into better ones consistently, has philosophically impacted coaching in the entire hiring process in the NFL, and leads a locker room with serene passion as Sean McVay does. Not to mention, his teams are always healthy thanks to his adaptable style of training and the long line of his assistants that have become head coaches, a result of his proficiency in hiring assistants. He proved he can win at a high level with the average play at the most important position, then finally with an above-average quarterback, was blessed into NFL history forever in February with a Super Bowl win, saving the game with a ballsy 4th and 1 jet sweep play that was perfectly schemed and executed by his best player, the culmination of what he's built since 2017. To me, Sean, even more than John Madden, is the modern day equivalent of Bill Walsh, and I don't say that lightly. I know the Walsh comparisons were reserved for Kyle Shanahan because of the San Francisco connection, and I understand that. And for all we know, McVay-Shanahan will be this era's Walsh-Gibbs in terms of coaching rivalries. But McVay mirrors Walsh's proficiency in play calling, emotional intelligence, and leadership, and each of the two men turns a perennial loser into a consistent winner. Walsh ended up carving himself out a legacy as one of the greatest coaches in NFL history, and something tells me that McVay can do the same by the time he calls it quits. Sean is an era-defining coach, a genius and innovator in every sense, and the future of NFL coaching. Sean McVay is the best coach in the NFL.